In this life, you can often hear from some people rather strange questions, to which it is not easy to give adequate answers. And therefore, sometimes it is easier to ask a competent counter-question to a person who does not understand the meaning of your question, than to try to answer him. One of such strange questions that people ask themselves and others is the question, how to live without money. Well, what is the question here? Can you answer the person who asks you this? You can say that there is no way to live without them. At least in this world. How do you like this answer? Doesn't suit you? Well, if it doesn't suit you, then read on in this article. I have really strained my brains to consider this very interesting question, really seriously. True, when I lived without money, well, almost without money, there was very little of it in my family. I did not feel very well. I remember that my stomach was often empty because of such a life. So, of course, it is possible to live without money, but whether it is necessary to live without it, I can't answer you so easily. You need to think carefully about it. But first, I would like to ask you a few questions, because I can't help myself, about life without money. First, why would we or you live without it at all? Second, how do you imagine it, that is, how do you see life without money? How are you going to interact with people in such a case? And most importantly, how will people deceive each other if they don't have money? Or do you want to say that we can live without deception? Come on, this whole world is built on deception. God forbid if we all suddenly become honest people, then, as George Carlin said in one of his speeches, our system will go down the drain. It is thanks to money that smart people buy stupid people with all their guts, thereby turning them into their servants. How can we refuse such a benefit, especially for those who print as much money as they want? And we ourselves, after all, do not recognize anything except money. Honesty, responsibility, integrity, mutual assistance, love, all these things have long been forgotten by us. In short, it is impossible to live without money. At least in this capitalist parasitic society, it will not work. So, what other life without money are you considering? Where are you going to live like that, in the mountains or something? Well, and thirdly, I want to ask you such a trivial question. Have you, dear reader, tried to live with money, huh? Maybe if you had money, in the amount you needed, you would not think about life without it? Okay, we are done with questions. There will be no more questions, I promise. From now on there will only be a free flight of thoughts and analysis of facts. Still, a question is a question and an answer to it must be found. Therefore, if it is possible and even necessary to live without money, we must understand how this can be done. I would like, by the way, to suggest that you read my article, which is called How to Get Your Money Back, so that if someone owes you money, you know how to get it back. Debts are debts, but returning to the topic of life without money, you should pay attention to the problems that may arise for those wishing to live such a life. And I am not talking about material problems, but about problems with society, in particular with the law. After all, if you think about it, it turns out that it is really possible to live without money, and live very well. It is just that mutual settlements between people can take place on more favorable terms for each person, and this is some kind of justice, social justice, which can be achieved in this way. Even if you find other ways of mutual settlements between people, as it was in ancient Rus, when they used the skins of fur animals, and the Spartans used iron rods instead of money, the Aztecs used chocolate, some tribes of Africa and Asia used shells, and so on. So, as soon as you come up with something like this and start living without money, people from certain structures will soon visit you in order to find out the reason for your civil disobedience. Money is a replacement for slave chains, which slave owners refused because they were less profitable than money. So how can you refuse them? You decided to become free, but who needs you in this world when you are free? If money stops tying your hands and feet, then you will have to fight for your freedom with those who decide to put chains on you again. And there will be those who want to do this, you can be sure. I remember reading Napoleon Hill's book The Law of Success, in which he writes at the very beginning that greed, deception, self-interest, the desire to reap where you did not sow, prevent a person from achieving success. Damn it, I thought, this is such a famous author, and he talks such nonsense. All these things help people achieve success, but do not hinder them. What is he even talking about? Either the author went crazy when he wrote his book, and he actually knows nothing at all about real success, but only pretends to know, or, what is more likely, he was fulfilling someone's order, the task of which was to fool the crowd, thirsty to achieve success in life. And exactly the same scribblers as Napoleon Hill, but with a different bias, call on people to refuse all material goods, call on them to live according to their conscience, which they themselves have long forgotten, and call on them to live without money, or to be more precise, to live without enough money. Do you understand what I'm talking about? How can you write about people living for many thousands of years, somehow it's wrong, when they profit at the expense of their neighbors? So, in general, I liked Napoleon Hill's books, but his words about honesty, they just killed me. The richest politicians, it turns out, are honest people. Brutal. Therefore, no one will allow you to organize people's lives without using money, but without enough money, live as much as you want, be poor and humble, it suits the master. The life of an individual, of course, is of no use to anyone, if you want to live without money, without light, without water and food, and at the same time without air, live as much as you can. The morgue also needs to work, and for its work lifeless bodies are needed, so your efforts to limit yourself will only be welcomed there. But as soon as you start doing something like that with society, for example, introducing some kind of your own currency, calling on people to exchange something with each other without using money, you will immediately be set on by the watchdogs who are ready to tear anyone to pieces for their own bone. Money is a very serious thing, it is not a wild drunkard or drugs, and not even organized banditry. Killing the authority of money is already an attempt at real power, world power. By the way, I know there are such guys, supposedly cool, who are constantly bending their fingers, because they have learned a simple scheme, buy and sell. So, if you are as cool as you consider yourself, then try to forget about the American dollar. Introduce some kind of your own currency, and I will see what they do with your steel balls, from your point of view, for this. Well, if you are not one of those paper peppers and are not going to test the strength of your genitals, then read my article entitled What to Do If You Urgently Need Money, which will teach you how to cope with your financial difficulties in short periods of time. In principle, you can live without money, in some corner of the planet far from civilization, where there is nothing to buy for this money, not to mention its influence on people. There are people in this world who live without money and without anything that the civilized world gives, but these people are most likely unhappy. In any case, I think that they are unhappy, because one way or another, but the more closely we interact with each other, the more we receive from each other, the more attention we receive from the people around us, the happier we feel. We are, like, social creatures, so it is very difficult for us to live without contact with other people, and money, these very contacts allow us to establish and they control them. Well, you understand, who is interested in a poor person who has nothing, cannot afford anything, for whom all doors are closed, who lives like an outcast. Who would want to at least communicate with him? And imagine that you have money, chickens peck. And how many people interested in you will immediately appear around you? Quite a few, I assure you. Some curs stick to money like flies to feces, especially lazy women with no self-esteem, ready to crawl under anyone and anything, for the sake of money. Such are the rules of this world. And people. Well, what are people, if they can be forced to buy toothpaste for crazy money, if they can be sent to cheap resorts where they are robbed, raped, beaten and insulted, what can we say about money? The average citizen doesn't give a damn about what he eats, both literally and figuratively. He is more or less capable of making only a quantitative, not a qualitative analysis of anything, therefore the more often and the more persistently advertising instills something in him, the more trust he is imbued within the advertised product. And money is a commodity, and as I said in my very first article, it is an ideological commodity, which is essentially a religion, and not an equivalent of the value of other goods and services. Therefore, it is only worth convincing the majority of people that you can buy everything for money, and they, pay attention, will sell everything for it, including their own asses. And tell me that I am wrong, tell me that money is worth something today. It is not worth a damn, except for everything that you and I are willing to sell ourselves for of our own free will. And in order to live without money, you need to have a much higher level of consciousness, in which not animal instincts, but reason, controls a person. I suggest you read my article, How to Profitably Take Money on Credit, which will be useful for you in case you decide to borrow money from a bank. Credit itself is a useful thing, but very slippery, and in the wrong hands it can bring its owner not so much benefits as suffering. In general, friends, if we take into account human nature, then thanks to money, we have the opportunity to feel better than others, even in those cases when in fact we are nobodies. Well, judge for yourself, can some illiterate profiteer compare in usefulness to society with a good scientist or a good doctor, or a farmer who grows food for thousands of idlers? Obviously not. But, by speculating, this illiterate profiteer can have significantly more money than more useful people for society who do not have it. And, considering the importance of money for our society, he will have many more opportunities and will live a sweeter life than those who essentially provide him with this life. This is not entirely normal, but the profiteer probably likes this state of affairs. And if we also take into account all sorts of social pests, then we will simply be horrified by the immorality and cynicism that have become the norm in our lives and which flourish thanks to money. So it turns out that it doesn't matter what kind of person you are, how useful you are to people, how honest and decent you are, all these are useless indicators. The main thing is that you have a lot of money, only then will people recognize you, accept you, and respect you. Yes, they will also envy you, but these are trifles. Envy is a byproduct of the sweet life, which does not greatly affect its quality, it rather complements it. Some people, my friends, tell me, why did you, a kid, create a website about money? Because money is not the main thing, there are more important things in life and it would be better if you wrote about them. Maybe I would write if the issue of money was not so acute in our society. A person who has no money will always fight for survival, which means he will think at the level of an animal. So how can you talk about bright and sublime things on an empty stomach? You don't like money? Build a world without them, as, for example, Jacques Fresco suggests, and if you succeed, then go ahead. But if you can't do anything, then don't teach me anything, what and for what purposes I should create, I know myself. I created what most people need. I created a useful information product that has no analogs on the internet. What, you want to say that the internet is full of sites about money? And have you read what is written on them? Have you thought about what is written on these sites, by their authors? Have you compared their words with the deeds of real people with money? No? Of course not, you haven't analyzed or compared anything, you really don't need it. But I read, compared, analyzed, and I must say, most of the resources did not impress me. And how can they impress a person who gnawed his own way into the world, who was helped by no one? After all, neither you, nor me, are needed by anyone in this life. So why the hell would anyone teach us how to make money, how to handle it, how to be really rich people and thus be better than everyone else. Just think about the absurdity of this idea. A person must have some very strong reasons to share useful knowledge with other people, and these reasons can be reduced to both money and a certain idea that such a person lives by. Very rarely are these two things combined in one person. Often people do something for free for the benefit of society only because of an idea, or only for money. But in me, an insignificant need for money and a fairly strong ideology are combined. Moreover, I do not really need money, and doing something because I want to, and not for the sake of money, is very pleasant. This is freedom, real freedom. Therefore, the knowledge I give is of great value, mainly for people who are far from understanding money, because moneybags already know everything. So be sure to read my articles. While I have had a serious light bulb go off because of my poor past life, and I am here ranting about social justice, in addition to pursuing my financial interests, you can read my revelations absolutely free of charge and squeeze the maximum benefit out of them for yourself. But don't be shy about working with me for money, because I don't take money for nothing, so you won't be left out in the cold. Well, okay, I won't promote myself, I don't have a great need for that. I'd rather suggest you read my article Bad and Good Money so that you can learn to understand them properly. Because there are many opinions about money in this life, but there is only one truth, and if you don't know it, you will get tired of wandering around and around, trying to succeed in something. Personally, I am not against living without money, even though I have plenty of it. Why? Because in a world without money, if we grow up to it, a completely different system of values will prevail, in which a person will be assessed by his real, not imaginary, merits to society. Personally, I am sick of those dry-brained penguins who walk around with a proud look and with their stinking wineskin, telling other people what and how they should do. Do not think that a person with money is always, and with everything happy. Only idiots can always, and with everything happy. They can generally smile all year round, as if stunned by an ore and radiate optimism inadequate to reality. A normal person is always dissatisfied with something, remember that. And it is one thing to be dissatisfied when your door was sawed shut while you are very wild, and quite another when you are forced all your life, like some boy, to submit to the will of other people. And money will not free you from the need to submit to someone, because money is valuable only for those who, firstly, feel a strong need for it, and secondly, for those for whom it was actually printed. I have already written about this, and more than once, I have explained that money is fodder for the crowd, while the owners of these pieces of paper and numbers do not need the money itself, they need real values, and they get them. So imagine a life in which you are assessed by your real qualities, by your usefulness to society, by your interests, by your education, by your goals and methods of achieving them. Imagine that someone can fall in love with you as a person, and at the same time not look at what kind of car you have, what kind of house you have, and how much money you have in your bank account. You see, without money, it is the person, with all his guts, who would come to the fore. It is the real qualities of the person that would be assessed, and not all these wrappers and toys that we surround ourselves with to seem cool. Of course, I don't care whether we can come to such a life or not. In principle I feel pretty good now, but like any crazy person, I want to leave the good and come to the best. I suggest you read my article What to Do If You Don't Have Money to Pay a Loan, so that you know how to solve the problem with a loan that you, for one reason or another, cannot repay. Dreams are dreams, and you can make as many assumptions as you like, but given our harsh reality, you should still learn to live with money, not without it. As I said at the very beginning, no one will refuse money, because it allows people to parasitize on each other. Capitalism, as we now know, has no human face, it only has a beast's grin, and if we are forced to swim in the same waters with the sharks of capitalism, we should sharpen our teeth and learn to fight for our piece of the pie. And then, Do you really think that having refused money, people will not find another way to deceive and exploit each other? Yes, it is in the blood of a person to climb on the neck of his neighbor. We cannot live without at least someone to command and at someone's expense. And all the benefits that each person needs, we also do not want to distribute equally. We rake everything under ourselves, like a child toys. How can one live without money with such people, with such a nature? This is a disaster for our society, where almost everything is bought and sold for money.